All right, let's talk about something we've all seen. You ever wonder about the secret logic behind prices? You know, why one sale can cause an absolute frenzy while another one is just crickets? Well, today we're going to crack that code. We're talking about one of the most powerful ideas in all of economics. I mean, really think about this. A huge sale on a new TV. People will line up for blocks, right? It's a whole event. But what if your grocery store put up a big sign? 50% off salt. Are you going to rush out and buy a lifetime supply? Yeah, probably not. So, what gives? What's the real difference here? Well, the answer to that whole puzzle is this secret code. It's something that businesses and, yeah, even governments use every single day to figure things out. And that code has a name elasticity. So, let's dive right in and figure out how this thing works. Okay, so the official term is price elasticity of demand, but really it all boils down to just one key word responsiveness. It's just a way to measure how much our buying habits change when the price of something changes. You know, how sensitive are we really to a price tag moving up or down? So you can think of this responsiveness as having two basic flavors. First, you've got elastic demand. The best way to picture this is like a rubber band. It's super stretchy. A tiny little change in price can cause a huge change in how much people buy. And then you have the opposite, inelastic demand. Think of this as something stiff, like a metal rod. The price can move all over the place, but the amount people buy, it barely even moves. But it's not really just an on or off switch. Elasticity is more like a spectrum, and to really get a feel for it, it helps to look at the absolute extremes. On one end, you have something called perfectly inelastic. This is where demand is just completely, totally unresponsive. No matter what happens to the price, up or down, people buy the exact same amount. A classic example would be a life-saving medicine. For the people who need it, the price doesn't really factor into their decision to buy it. And on the other extreme, you've got perfectly elastic. This is where demand is, well, infinitely responsive. Here, the tiniest, slightest price increase will cause demand to just drop to zero. Now, this is pretty rare in real life, but you can imagine a farmer's market where a dozen people are selling identical tomatoes. If one person raises their price by even a penny, everybody's just going to buy from the person next to them. So, okay, now we know what elasticity is, but the really interesting part is why. Why is the demand for something stretchy and for other things stiff? Let's crack that code. Well, what makes a product elastic or not really comes down to a few key things. The big ones are there other good options out there? How much of my money does this thing actually cost me? And is it a need or want? Other stuff like time, how habit-forming it is, and how many different uses it has also play a part. Let's start with the biggest rule of thumb. The more substitutes or options you have for something, the more elastic its demand is. It makes sense, right? If the price of your favorite brand of coffee goes up, you can just switch to another one. That makes you very responsive, very stretchy to that price change. You have the power. For instance, take a drink like Vita. It has a ton of close substitutes, Milo, Ovaltine, you name it. So because of all that competition, the demand for Vita is going to be pretty elastic. A small price hike could send a lot of its customers to the other brands. Okay, on to rule number 2, and this one brings us right back to that salt example from the beginning. See, when an item is super cheap and barely makes a dent in our budget, we tend to be very inelastic. We just don't react much to price changes. Salt is the perfect case study here. A typical family spends, what, a few dollars a year on it? It's basically nothing. So even if the price of salt were to double overnight, it wouldn't affect your budget in any meaningful way. You just buy the same amount. Your demand is stiff. It's inelastic. And the third big rule is probably the most intuitive one of all. It's just the difference between needs and wants. Things we consider necessities, stuff we absolutely can't go without, tend to have inelastic demand. We have to buy them. Luxuries, though, those are things we can easily say no to if the price goes up, which makes their demand very elastic. Now, this idea of responsiveness is so useful, it actually goes beyond just how we react to price changes. The code is a little bigger than we thought. So this core concept of responsiveness, it also helps us understand the supply side, like how much sellers change their behavior when prices change. We can even use it to measure how our spending changes when we get a raise or a pay cut. And there's even a way to see how the price of one thing, like coffee, can affect the demand for something totally different, like tea. Okay, so this is all interesting, but why does it really matter? What's the payoff? Well, understanding elasticity helps us answer a huge real-world question about taxes. Think about it. When the government slaps a new tax on a product, let's say a $1 tax on a gallon of gas, who really pays that dollar? Does the company just have to suck it up and make less profit? Or do they just pass the entire cost on to us, the customers? Or is it maybe somewhere in the middle? Well, it turns out the answer is decided almost entirely by that secret code we've been talking about this whole time, the price elasticity of demand for that exact product. So let's take a good with inelastic demand, like gasoline. For most of us, it's a necessity, so our demand is stiff. We can't just stop driving to work. Because of that, when a tax gets added, the gas station knows they can pass most of that cost right on to us, and we don't have much choice but to pay it. The consumer bears most of the burden. But now, let's flip it. Think about a product with very elastic demand, like a specific brand of soda. There are tons of other options on the shelf. If that company tries to pass a new tax on to you by raising their price, you'll just buy a different soda. Your demand is stretchy. To avoid losing all their sales, the producer is forced to eat most of that tax cost themselves. So, here's the rule laid out plain and simple. If demand is inelastic, the consumer pays the bigger share. If demand is elastic, the producer pays the bigger share. And in those wild, extreme cases, if demand is perfectly inelastic, the consumer pays all of it. If it's perfectly elastic, the producer pays every last cent. And that gets us to the big takeaway for all of this. The burden of any tax always falls harder on whichever side of the deal has fewer choices, the side that is less responsive and can't easily walk away. Elasticity is really just about flexibility, and the one who is less flexible always ends up paying more. So there you have it. Elasticity isn't just some dry textbook term. It's the secret logic that explains so much about the prices we pay, the choices we make, and even who foots the bill for government services. So now that you know the code, where else do you see it at work in your own life? Thanks for joining me.